everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone doing? Took last week off. It was the 300th episode of my other podcast with my wife, Couples Therapy. It was a 3.5-hour extravaganza. You should listen to it, but it took forever to edit. Jason Mantzoukas is on there, Natasha Leggero, many other people. It's wonderful. Highly recommended. Is that a surprise that the host of this, who is also the co-host of that one, would recommend it? But no, it was really great. And yeah, how are your lives? How are you picking your way through the wasteland that is the slow dystopia? At least here in America. I don't know about anywhere else. Well, regardless of your location or how the dissolution of society is affecting you, got a great episode today. This is Tracyanne Campbell. If you don't know who Tracyanne is, I'm going to read you her bio right now. Originally from Glasgow, musician Tracyanne Campbell founded Camera Obscura in 1996 with John Henderson and Gavin Dunbar. Their first album, Biggest Bluest Hi-Fi, came out half a decade later to acclaim. And since then, they've released 4 other albums on labels like Elephant and 4AD. On May 3rd, very soon, Merge Records will release Camera Obscura's latest album, Look to the East, Look to the West, and folks, it's a banger. Yeah, Camera Obscura's first album came out right when I was in college, and we got it. I remember getting it at the radio station and really liking it. And I've been a fan ever since. So it was really cool to get to talk to Tracyanne, and we got into it. Not every guest is willing to go on the journey, despite the email I sent to everyone that spelled it out. But Tracyanne was down, and so we talk all about her childhood in Glasgow and what made her want to make music in the first place, and a lot of stuff about mental health. It's great. It's great. I hope you like this. And if you do, what I like to do here in the intro to the show is a little recommended if you like. If you're a first-time listener, and you're like, oh, this is great. Maybe you want to listen to other episodes. I have been doing this for now, I'm in the 15th year of doing the show, so that's a lot of episodes to listen to. So what I like to do is a little recommended if you like, right? If you like this, here are some other episodes you might like. Now, Camera Obscura, they are on Merge Records. So what about other episodes that I've done with Merge Records folks, such as, for example, Mac McCaughan, one of the founders of Merge Records from Superchunk and many other things. What about Will Butler, Mary Timony, Kurt Wagner of Lamb Chop, Darn Darnell of the Mountain Goats, the band Swear, and they even were on a live episode where they played music. So check out those episodes if you like what you hear. Subscribe to the show. Leave a review if you want. Takes seconds out of your life. That's nothing. What else? Social media. I'm at Andy Beckerman on all the platforms. Twitter. Is it worth it? I don't know. What a debate. Inside my head. Should I still post on that even though the owner is an out white supremacist? Actually saying it like that right into the microphone, pretty much the answer should be no, I should not. So I guess I'm mostly on Blue Sky these days and Instagram. Oh, and by the time this is out, I should have a new essay on my Substack called The Slow Dystopia, theslowdystopia.substack.com, where I try to unravel what the fuck is going on in the world, hopefully in a funny and philosophical way. Coming up next week on the show, Rafael Terral, wonderful Portuguese experimental musician. His latest album just came out on Drag City, and it's one of my favorites of the year so far. Will be one of my favorites when the year ends. There's no time frame, and I don't have to limit the list of albums that I love this year. And he grew up in the midst of a revolution going on in Portugal, so that was very interesting. So stay tuned for that next week, but for now, let's talk to Tracyanne. Sometimes when I know I'm going to talk to someone, I just pace around and imagine what the conversation is going to be.
Okay.
And I'm just like, okay, we're doing this in the evening for you.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
I was wondering, how old is your child?
10.
10. So they're still awake. This is not bedtime for them.
He's next door probably watching something on YouTube that's not for a 10-year-old.
Okay.
So it's that kind of thing.
Is that, wait, when you say not for a 10-year-old, does that mean you can't control it? You're like, I've given up on trying to control what he's watching, or is it?
I can control it, but some of the, or in his Xbox, some of the games that he wants to play are not for 10-year-olds. And it just seems like that's just a standard thing where you've got a 10-year-old who wants to do a thing that's for a 15-year-old. And he just thinks that's normal. I mean, I think 10-year-olds are far more sophisticated, if that's the right word, than we ever were. I don't know what age you are, but I'm going to be 50 in a couple of months. And when I was 10, I'm pretty sure no matter how much I begged or whatever it was I asked, could I watch something that was for a 15 or 16-year-old? The answer would have been absolutely no way. Whereas I feel like myself and other mums and dads were a bit sort of easily swayed, or we go, yeah, well, you've got this vocabulary and you seem a lot older than your years, so all right then, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
They're just pretty sophisticated. They know so much.
I'll take your word for it. I was thinking more back. I'm slightly younger than you, but in our day, I think we overlap with enough culture where you had to sneak it. Like I had to sneak HBO when my parents weren't around to see slight nudity on Dream On, if you remember that. It was a show on HBO in the late 80s, I believe. That was, it was totally not for kids, not just because of the slight nudity, but it was about a middle-aged man going through, I guess, an existential crisis and imagining himself in movies that he grew up with from the 30s and 40s. Mm-hmm. So it made no sense to me. At all. Yeah,
I think he watches a lot of stuff that makes no sense to him and he doesn't really get it. Like he gets The Simpsons and stuff, but he's been desperate to watch South Park, which I have to say is a program I never watched. I've never seen it. But my friends tell me, no, you can't watch that. Not yet.
Yeah. If anything, don't watch it because has a very deep libertarian ideology embedded in it. And so it's all, so that's more dangerous than Cartman saying the word shit or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, my parents were quite strict, I think. And there was a lot of, we had a telly program called Grange Hill, which was set in a school in London. And that was sort of risque. It was on after school, maybe about 4:00. And, they would deal. They were quite, quite sort of forward thinking, I suppose. And there was even a few episodes about drugs, which was made the news in this country. It was a big deal. And there was a sort of campaign and there was music, a single released about it, and it was Just Say No, it was called. And I had that 45. The lead character was singing the song Just Say No. It was a big sort of anti-drugs campaign, probably around the time that what's her face, Nancy Reagan, was going out and doing her thing. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that made it all the way over into Scotland.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But that program, my point was that sometimes my stepdad would not let me watch that program. It was for kids, but he'd be like, oh, no. Or there'd be Australian soap operas that everybody wanted to come home and watch. It was a big thing, Kylie and Jason's Wedding. I don't know if you got those programs with Jason Donovan and Kylie Minogue. Anyway, it was a big deal. All the teenagers watched it and they would be like, oh, no, you're not watching that. It's a load of rubbish. So quite strict in that way. Yeah.
Were they strict for religious reasons? Was it just something cultural in them?
No, I just think sometimes parents were strict for their reasons that they had at the time. I don't know, Yeah. They weren't strict all the time. It wasn't like I was never allowed to do anything or I never had any fun. I did, but there was definitely, that kind of sense that I felt I was maybe at home before other kids or sent to bed earlier than what I perceived other children to be doing. But when I think about it now, I think everybody just does their best, you know.
Sure.
There's a reason why you've got your kids in bed at 8 o'clock, because you're tired and you want some of your own time. I can't quite manage that. I'm sounding here like I've got no control over my kid. But I do have some, I've got as much control as I need to have. I guess the thing is as well, maybe, I don't know if this is a sweeping generalisation, but maybe we're less interested in controlling our children in that way. You know, they're a bit more, a bit more less like bits of furniture, or children should be seen and not heard and all of that.
Right.
It's not really like that now, is it?
Well,
you know.
It's interesting. The older I get, I don't have kids, but the older I get, I realize just the limits of my control over anything, let alone other human beings. And I don't know what I would do if I had another human being whose well-being I was supposed to be in control of. And at some point they realize, hey, wait, I can do what I want. And that would scare me. That the possibility of them having that realization would scare me, because it really is. Yeah. I'm like, the reason I obeyed my parents was because I was scared of not doing well in school. I was scared of breaking rules. Yeah. I thought that my future depended upon me following everything that they, and I look, hey, did I sneak out of the house once to go see the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones in Philadelphia? Yeah. Okay.
Wow, I'd say that's I would never have done that, just let me tell you. Never. I was pretty good at goody two-shoes.
Yes, but most of the time I was straight A student, all this kind of stuff. But it was out of fear. And if I just didn't have that fear, I probably would have just done what I wanted and been like, what are you guys going to do about it? In a certain sense. I mean, they can ground you.
I guess kids also, I suppose, to a certain extent, want to please their parents to an extent.
Yes.
That's pretty natural. I think when they don't want to do that and they're not a little bit scared of repercussions or consequences, then you're in trouble. I try not to think so much about, the future and when he decides that he wants to do this, that, or the next. I think I've already had the chats with myself. Maybe because I was an older parent, it's important not to try and control this person, because this person is a person. Yeah, you've got to make sure he doesn't get knocked down and make sure he's got enough food and, he's warm and all of that. But when they get to a certain age, they're always themselves, but when they get to a certain age and they really want to express themselves, I'm probably going to have to work hard, maybe, to really let them do it and not freak out,
Did you obey your parents out of fear, or did you obey them out of reverence? Or, it could be a mix of those things, could be other things. Like, what made you want to obey them? I
don't know. I think it's not like it was fear because something like they were going to hit me or something like that. It was not nothing like that. There was just a sort of understanding that you did what you were told. And I suppose it depends what kind of family you're in. If you look around, you see your cousins, and your cousins are doing what they're told, and we're all doing what we're told, and people are still having a nice time, then you do what you're told. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I was just a pretty, I think, pretty well-behaved kid. I was quite shy, and I was quite probably introverted, and, I was sort of, I could be sort of outgoing in some ways. I was quite good at sport, and I was quite, bright in the class and stuff like that. And I like to do well. And in sport, I like to really do well. I suppose that was the most show-offy I was, but I didn't like a lot of attention. I didn't like the focus being on me, which is a sort of weird contradiction for somebody that grows up and becomes somebody that stands at the front of a stage. Yeah. But I'm still getting to grips with that.
It is. Okay, so I do find that fascinating, because I was kind of the same way-ish, but I wanted the attention. This was the contradiction. It was, at the time, I definitely wanted the attention. I could make jokes from the back of the classroom. Right. Because no one was behind me and could see me. But if I was in front, then I was quiet.
You wanted the teacher to know that you were well behaved.
Well, I could in the classes where I was just an outright like fantastic student.
Right.
I felt, and the teacher was cool. I felt I had some kind of leeway to goof around because I'm like, I'm doing great in this class. But this is the thing. Only if I was in the back. Only if I was sitting in the back. It was once there were eyes on me, then I started to get like tight, and I'm like, well, I don't want to make a joke. What if the joke bombs? What if this joke in German class bombs? Yeah. I don't want to. I really don't want to sit here with that feeling, and that's what I'm curious about. Did you like what you wanted? Did you want the attention? I guess is part A of the question. And then because you said you were like, you were good at, I don't know, what were you playing? Football? What was the what?
Well, I was just good at sort of general athletics, like running and stuff like that. So I did some running, got some medals for doing stuff like that, relay race and sprints, and I did gymnastics when I was younger. I just was very naturally quite sporty, and I loved winning at sport. And when I look back now, I think, oh God, I was one of those people in the class. Really, oh God, it's not too cool, is it? Just being sporty and grabbing the ball and being the best at running and stuff. So I did like that, but at the same time, I didn't like a lot of attention. So I hated it in class if I had to read aloud or stand up and, I had to be in a play, or I hated that. I was really self-conscious. I really didn't like it. I still don't like it, actually. I just manage it better than I used to.
Is it the pressure? Is that like you just don't enjoy the feeling of the pressure?
Yeah, I don't enjoy the feeling of the pressure to, there's a lot of, I think that there's been a lot of anxiety sort of in some of my, periods of my life, not when I was a little kid, but certainly when I was late teens, that feeling of not wanting to be looked at, or, I don't know, I suppose that started late teens in school. I really hated, I guess when you're a teenager, you become really self-conscious, Well, maybe not everybody, but I did. I was very self-conscious. And I think that's quite a natural thing. You start developing, and you don't want to, I don't know, I was just never a big show-off in the classroom. I was never the one sticking my hand up going, I'll read that part in that play. If they chose me, I'd go, oh no, don't choose me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's what I'm curious about with you. Because I wanted it, but I also did not want it. The pressure, like this was the thing. This has gone out throughout my entire life, which is I want that attention. I want that the feeling of like winning is great. Uh-oh, the cat behind me. The winning feeling feels so good, but the losing feeling, bombing on stage, or like just fucking up a joke or something like that, feels so bad.
Yeah.
That that this contradiction plays out in me all the time, and sometimes the desire to win wins out, and sometimes the desire not to avoid the possibility of a loss wins out, and then I shrink back.
Yeah, I think I have that as well. But sometimes you're not in a position where you can get out of being in that position. If I'm on a tour or something, or I booked into a studio to record a record, and I think, I don't really feel up to it tonight because I can't take not managing it. Well, you've got to just get on with it and face the fear, face the fear of that. But I think I'm getting on to a different topic because I'm starting to talk about anxiety, because I think that anxiety's played a big part in my life, and it still does. And anxiety is something that's stopped me from doing stuff in the past, but it's also not stopped me, because if it had really stopped me, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't be booking a tour and thinking about getting on a stage, it would have stopped me. So I'm sort of determined to be aware of the anxiety and about that feeling of I don't want to bomb, or I don't want to say the thing and look like a fool, or I have to really remind myself, you're going to have to do it anyway. You know, you're just going to have to do it anyway.
Interesting. So when you were younger, what was overpowering the anxiety? Like, what was because you felt it. Okay. Or let me go back a little bit more. Did you know it was anxiety then? Like, because this is, especially in America, I don't know how it was in the UK in the 70s and 80s, but mental health was not really, you didn't deal with it really unless you had to, right?
I come from Glasgow and I come from a very working class family, and it's all very get your head down and get on with it. We don't have time for this. We're busy, we're at work. What do you mean? You feel anxious? What's that? What are you talking about? Just get on with it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that. Yep. For a 100%. Long time. Yeah. So you don't talk about these things.
Yeah. So did you recognize it as anxiety then, or was it just there's this weird feeling in me and I'm just going to shrink back from certain things?
Yeah. No, I think I just felt I was always very aware that I was perceived to be a shy child. Oh, she's really shy. They would say whilst I stood there. So I think, who can say if it was anxiety when I was much younger, but it was certainly anxiety as I got to my late teens and in my 20s. It was absolutely 100% undeniably anxiety, but yeah, I think it was always perceived to be shyness, which perhaps it was, but what is shyness? I don't know. I was a pretty shy kid, but then the contradiction is I was a shy kid, but if I was in a race with all the boys and girls in my class, I was going to try and beat every single one of them. And I didn't mind getting to the end and knowing that it was me that won the race.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what that's about.
Were you just so confident in your athletic ability that it overpowered it?
Yeah, I think so. So there's that, and then there's the confidence in, I'm not the biggest sort of show off on the stage or anything like that. I'm not the best, whatever, best singer or the best songwriter or anything, but there is a quiet confidence in me that knows I'm good enough. If that doesn't sound too arrogant.
No, in fact, I would say it's the opposite. I would say that you are much better than you are giving yourself credit for.
Okay. Well, I just know that there's reasons to stop yourself from doing stuff, and there's the right reasons and there's the wrong reasons, and you can't not do it because of anxiety. It just makes it worse. It feeds it.
Yeah. So is your athletic confidence, did that somehow just transfer over to artistic contexts?
I guess it did at some point because at some point I stopped kind of being athletic and sporty, and I sort of would do stuff like play football for fun, or play badminton or tennis or whatever. But I started being probably a bit more introverted and, wanting to stay at home, kind of reading books or drawing, or, I didn't really start writing songs till I was in my 20s. But I suppose I did a lot of thinking about it until then. A lot of sort of the desire was there, but I didn't really get off to it till much later on. But the desire to be involved in music somehow was always there, even from a young age. Even though I never took piano lessons, I never took guitar lessons, nothing like that. That just wasn't really a thing that was done in my family. It's just not. It just wasn't really the done thing.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of money kicking about. There just wasn't. It seemed like a very middle class thing to do. To get your kid piano lessons.
Yeah. Yes. My parents gave me piano lessons for a little while, and then they conflicted with Alf. Alf was on Monday nights, and
You
my
wanted to
piano
watch
lessons
Alf.
were then, and I was like, I can't miss Alf, and they eventually were like, fine, you don't have to take piano lessons anymore.
Yeah, well, my kid is, I would say we're pretty laid back with him. We don't make him do stuff he doesn't want to do, except the piano lesson. Now, somebody would sort of analyse me and go, well, that's because you didn't get the piano lesson and you want your kid to have what you... Well, yeah, it is. I want him to... It's half an hour a week. I don't make him sit down and do scales. I don't make him do hours and hours of practice. I just want him to turn up for half an hour to this young, cool guy's house and play some piano, and slowly but surely some theory will go in. And if I sit down and say to him, can you play me a D chord on the piano? He can do it right now. And he doesn't need to think about it. It's there. And that's all I want for him to have.
So when you were younger, I want to get back to some of this, because the thing that interests me a lot, and we'll get back to this, is the energy, whatever that energy is when you were running, right?
Yeah.
When you stopped doing that, that energy never left you. And so eventually it like transforms into this other thing. And we'll get back to that. But what did your parents do for a living? Because you said you were working class. Like, what was their jobs? What were their jobs?
My stepdad worked for a shipping company. So we live in Glasgow by the docks, and it's a shipping city traditionally. All my grandparents, well, the men certainly worked in the dockyards, the shipping yards. My mum was like a secretary, she worked in offices. And my dad, well, let's not talk about that, but my stepdad did that. So they were both office workers, really. They went to work in offices.
How old were you when your parents got divorced and your stepdad got in the picture?
I was 4 when my parents divorced, and I think my stepdad came around when I was 7 or 8.
Okay. So you were mostly raised by your stepdad.
He's like my dad. He's, he brought me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And did things change? I'm always curious about this when I talk to anyone born in the 70s in the US or UK, because when Reagan and Thatcher came in, everything kind of like the atmosphere changed. I don't know. I was a kid then, so I can't really. I can only look at it in retrospect. But I'm curious if especially with your parents being working class, if there was any.
It was a big thing. It was Maggie Thatcher in my household, and so my mum and stepdad would go to work, and I'd get dropped off at my great granny's house, and she was from Wales, so her father was a miner, and my grandpa worked in the shipyards, and they were very, sort of British working class people. And Maggie Thatcher's name was Dirt, but it seemed to be dirt in the playground. It was just, she was a baddie, like, boo, she was a rotter. Like, the kids used to... Totally, like, I've told my pals about this. So we used to draw, like, a little... matchstick man in your left palm, and then in the right hand you draw like a scribble. And the kids used to do this sort of song where they'd move their hand up and down. They'd sing, Maggie, Maggie Thatcher, throw her up and catch her. And they'd clap, squash the two palms together, go, Maggie, Maggie Thatcher, squash her till she's dead. And that was like a song in the playground, which makes me sound like I'm from 1920s or something, but but yeah, she was because my uncles in Wales were miners, so, and my great grandfather was a miner, and there were loads of miners in the family, so she was not liked.
Okay, so this is interesting, because you said you had some kind of like desire to make music in you, but it didn't seem like it was the thing to do. So I am curious then, how did it blossom?
Well, I say it wasn't the thing to do, but at the same time, music was very much part of my growing up, So my grandpa did play the mouth organ, and he could play the piano, but there wasn't a piano in the house, but they used to have one, and I knew he could play it. He'd just have been self-taught, but singing, and I mean, I don't know if you'll have heard this. It's very cliched, but Billy Connolly will talk about it. It's a bit of a sort of stereotypical thing that happens in Glasgow, and maybe in Scotland, in Greater Scotland, or in different parts of the UK, but certainly in Glasgow, it's a very sort of tradition of, in those days, people entertaining themselves. So family get-togethers and parties where people would be told to do what was called their turn, and everybody had to get up, do a turn. You know, you get stood up and you recited a poem, or usually people would sing songs. You know, so there was a lot of singing at gatherings. If they all got together in a Saturday night, you know, the room would be filled with sort of cigar smoke and whiskey fumes, and the kids would be all running about daft, and the adults would start taking their turn to entertain each other, and they'd get up and sing a song. And I vividly remember those parties. I remember, you know, some of the characters. There was an auntie called Blue, not named after the Beatrice Dahl character in the Jean-Jacques Binet film Betty Blue, but she was called Blue because she wore blue all the time, apparently. Okay. She'd get up and sing like Cher songs, and you know, my grandpa would get up and sing sort of Scottish folk ballads. You know, I remember him singing the song "The Road to Dundee," and there'd be my other granny would get up and sing like Hank Williams songs and Hank Thompson songs. You know, just so very much singing and doing your turn was a bit of a standard, you know, bog standard thing. They didn't do it with instruments. I mean, I'm sure in some houses somebody would have brought a guitar, but they would just sort of stand in the middle of the floor with a glass of whiskey or whatever in their hand and belt it out, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was musical.
Did you take a turn?
I did not. And that's the thing. I always remember when I got a bit older, I think it was my granny's 70th birthday party, and of course Blue was there, and she was always, you know, the one that everybody wanted to get up. Oh, Blue's going to sing, get up and sing, Blue. And at this point, I think I was in my early 20s, maybe like 21 or something, and I was trying to get a band together, and people knew that I wanted to do that. But I was horrified at the thought of getting up and singing a song in front of them. And they're going, oh, you take a turn. And I remember my auntie sort of saying, oh, she won't do it. She's too shy. She's too shy. What do you mean she's too shy? I thought she wanted to be a singer, you know, all of this. But I would not do it. I just would feel too, I don't know, exposed.
No, yeah, totally. No, yes.
Anxious.
No, yeah. Okay, there I think you hit upon something that it's the vulnerability of the act that is, because now you can be judged.
Yeah.
There's something I think that's interesting about in an athletic competition, you can't be judged. You either do it or you don't do it. Right? You either succeed or you don't succeed.
Yeah.
But when it comes to playing a piece of music, you can succeed for yourself. You can be like, yeah, I wrote a great song. Like if I play like a Silver Jews song for my wife, she's like, turn this off now. This is terrible.
Okay.
But I'm like,
it's unfair.
I'm like, this speaks deeply to me. This is like real. And she's like, no. So the minute that you open yourself up to something that can be interpreted or that is about taste, right?
Perhaps.
It's now a vulnerable, you are now exposing part of yourself in a way that can't just be, I won or I didn't win, right? And you can't, like, maybe you can say like, oh, well, you should have run faster. It's like, what kind of criticism is that, right? You know, you have like, you know, ESPN where people like dissect football, American football, or like basketball and being like, oh, we should have passed there or something like that. Like you can do stuff like that, but it really doesn't. It really is just like, did they win or didn't they? Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there seems to be that kind of thing that's in in this where you're like I personally do not want to be judged by my parents.
No.
They do not have the same taste as me.
I think I also had some issue kind of being myself. When I say being myself, I mean that part of me, you know, because I was the shy kid. I was like, oh, she's shy. She won't want to do that. And even though I could fully take on that and go, yeah, that's me. That's who I am. There was this other part of me, not secret, but kind of other person that dared to think that, you know, when I went to see Juliana Hatfield, aged 21 in Glasgow King Tut's, I dared to think, I'm going to do that. I want to do that. I want to do what she's doing, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So then what was it that gave you that confidence? I'm going to be Juliana Hatfield.
I don't know. I just had the desire, I guess, to write the songs, to write the words, to write about how I was feeling. Actually, when I started college, aged 18, I was 18. I went to Glasgow, North Glasgow College, to do a film and recording course where I was going to learn to be the engineer, you know. And then today when we started this podcast, I couldn't even get the computer sorted out. So it just tells you how much I was paying attention in that class. But I went to learn to do that. But that's where I met John Henderson, who I started my aspirations of being in a band. Sort of were born there at North Glasgow College, because I was quite shy when I went to North Glasgow College, but I still wanted to go to see bands and see music, and it was my obsession, you know, it was my passion. And when I met him, he seemed really outgoing. I wouldn't, you know, sit at the table in the dining hall and tell a joke, or stand up in the class and go, put my hand up to be, you know, on the desk engineering. I would sort of stand at the back, and he was very outgoing, and I thought, right, he'll do. He can do the singing, and I'll write the songs, you know. So I still didn't feel. It was kind of like an accident that I started or became the singer. Actually. So I didn't have that aspiration. I wanted to be in a band, but I didn't know at that point that I wanted really to be at the front. But the first moment I remember feeling that was at that Juliana Hatfield gig, where she wasn't that much older than me, and, you know, she wasn't jumping about the stage like a lunatic, you know, she was just sort of playing her guitar, and I thought, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could manage that, you know.
Was the shyness, did it become less of your personality and just more of a, I don't even know, I was going to say cage. I don't even mean it like that, but just like, well, I'm the shy kid, I have to do this. Even as you started to emerge as like more of a confident person. I
think I tried to fight it. I tried to work against it. You know, my insecurities and, you know, the unkind voice in my head that told me I was not good enough, or don't be ridiculous, you know, whatever voice that was. I just kind of fight it every day, you know, sort of talk it down. And I think I've always had that, to be honest. I'm much better at it now. I don't think that way too much. It'll pop up, but I do have to fight it. I have to work with it.
Is it just a kind of malignant version of, well, we don't do that. We're you know, we're a working class family. We don't do that.
I think so. It's not like people were saying to me, "Oh, you can't do this," or, I mean, I suppose there wasn't great encouragement for it, to be honest, you know. But maybe it was difficult for them to believe that I could do it because I was the shy kid. Maybe they sort of thought, what? This is too much of a weird contradiction. What are you talking about? You know, to be honest, I don't know how much they would like to hear it, but I think my mum would have liked me just to go and get the job in the bank like I was meant to. Or, you know, I'm sure she's very happy now that I'm fine, but maybe in my 20s she probably thought, oh, this is a pipe dream. What's this rubbish? You know, what's this all about? You know, because I went for an interview in the in the Bank of Scotland. And I thought about this recently, actually. And I thought about how I cringed when I thought about it, because I thought about how I went to the Bank of Scotland to get this interview. My mum was really pleased, oh, you've got an interview in the bank. You're going to get a job in the bank. And I told the woman, I don't really want to work in a bank. I want to be in a band. Of course, I didn't get the job, did I? Because she was obviously like, what? You're not meant to say that to me.
Yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah.
When I think about it, I feel, God, that was quite arrogant, actually. That was quite arrogant. Or it was confident. It was confidence.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I will have your job in the bank, thanks. I think I'm going to go and try and be a musician, tour the world.
Was it naivete at all? Was it all like, I can tell them what I really want to do and they'll still hire me?
I don't know. I think I did not want that job in the bank.
So, okay, this is really interesting because it's familiar to me in a certain way, but also knowing you had this desire, is when I was that age, I didn't really realize I everything felt bad. Like when I did quote unquote normal stuff, it just felt awful. And I didn't kind of realize why. And I'm curious, when did it emerge? Like, when did it become a conscious kind of like, outside of like seeing Juliana Hatfield, like an actual desire, like, oh, this is really what I want to do. And even though I have this voice in my head, even though my parents are kind of just like, I'm going to pursue it anyway.
I think when I went to college, when I was 18, 19, and I started learning how to play guitar, and when I met John Henderson, and then I could see that there were other sort of creative people around me, people who maybe didn't really know what they were doing. Some people were in the course because they wanted to be musicians. I started hanging about with more creative types of people. I got this job at this sort of distribution company, this sort of part-time job when I was at college, and it was a sort of arts and entertainment distribution thing where I used to go around the city putting posters up for gigs or leaflets, on tables or in clubs. And there was a lot of people that worked there that seemed to be doing other creative stuff, whether it was trying to make films or, artists, painters. And I guess when I started hanging about with people like that, I started thinking, this is actually possible. Everybody in my family just gets a job and goes to work and comes home and puts the dinner on and takes the kids to the cinema on a Friday night or whatever. Not to belittle that or dismiss it, but there was nobody saying, I want to do this thing that nobody else has done.
Yeah.
My brother, to be fair, he kind of had aspirations to do a thing as well, and that was to be a footballer. He was actually pretty good and, was supposed to make it, and did go pretty far. So the two of us did have sort of aspirations to do these jobs that were probably unlikely. But at the same time, we both individually believed we're going to do this. And I did believe it. I did have a quiet confidence. I never doubted it. I never doubted my passion for it. So I sort of felt like I put all my eggs in the one basket. I wasn't willing to go and look anywhere else. And I think there's been points in my life where I've looked back and I've gone, you should have tried harder to stay at college and get your head down and have another, string to your bow. But at college, I had a lot of anxiety problems, a lot, and I had to sort of drop out. So it really wasn't an option. I wasn't kind of very well in my early 20s with that sort of thing. But despite all of that, I still had this knowing that I'm just going to do this. It'll be fine. I had a feeling, it's going to work out. It'll be all right.
Interesting. Do you think the anxiety made it so that you couldn't, and again, I'm not trying to belittle a quote unquote normal life either, but I'm just saying that like for me, it just didn't feel, my schedule, the way my body was like, I like staying up late. I feel it's natural to stay up till like 2 a.m.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I write a lot of times from like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It just feels better. And so like, it seemed like just from my natural biology, a lot of life was excluded me.
Yeah.
I just could like, it was really painful to go to school, to like wake up early. Like when I was in college, I tried to really schedule everything for afternoons.
Yeah.
And I would go out of my way too.
I can't get that job in the bank because I don't want to be up at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
I need to stay up late. Yeah. Well, you make it work, don't you? I guess you find your way.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if the anxiety made it so you're just like, well, I can't just do this quote unquote normal stuff that everyone else is doing. It just doesn't fit.
I couldn't. I actually have always felt like I couldn't. And people would say, oh, don't be ridiculous. Of course, if you had to go out and get an ordinary job, you would do it. But I've always thought, no, I'm not doing that. It doesn't suit me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want that to sound arrogant or, you know, that there's something wrong with doing, you know, there's lots of great jobs. I've just never felt, maybe I've always felt I wouldn't be any good at that. You know, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with this.
Neither of us are knocking that stuff. I just think it is very...
No, absolutely not.
Look, and I will say this, especially in 2024, it's getting increasingly more and more difficult to do the stuff we do.
Yeah.
So if I could do something simple and then come home, it would be very nice to just come home and just like chill and not have to worry and not be trying like this. I think it was this morning when I woke up, or maybe when I was trying to fall asleep, I was just thinking about this thing that I've been working on. And I'm like, it would be nice just fall asleep and not just have like be trying to fall asleep and I'm thinking about dialogue of like something I'm writing, or like, oh, how could I put together, like, it would be nice to make an indie movie. You know, I would like to do that before I die. And I'm like, I started thinking about like, oh, well, I guess I have this idea and this person could be a producer. Like I start putting this stuff together. It would be nice to just, for my brain to just shut the fuck up and for me to go to bed. To
have a rest. And I wonder, I think that's why I started thinking about that job in the bank recently, because I started thinking, what if I would just be nearly retired or something, or I'd have a nice pension, or, you know, or I could just go to work at 9 a.m, come home at 5, and that would be, I could shut my bloody brain off. Yeah. But, you know, I'm grateful that I'm doing what I do. It is a privilege. And even though I moan about it and sometimes I think, oh, this is too hard, you know, especially these days. But then I think, nah, this is really what I want to do. And it's what I've always wanted. And you've got it. So shut up. You know, you've got what you wanted.
Yeah.
Get on with it.
Yeah. So when you were at university, what was exactly, like, was the anxiety just making you like, I don't want to go out, I don't want to go to class? Was it making it, when you were in class, just unbearable? Like, what was happening?
Yeah. I started to get real serious anxiety that made me feel like I was losing my mind. And I started to have really bad panic attacks. You know, very bad, crippling anxiety, I would say it was at that point. That's when I was around, 21 or something like that, early 20s. But I was still managing to aspire to write songs and, you know, do that. That's the sort of weird contradiction, I suppose, and that's probably what the difficulty was for other people to understand, like parents or whatever, you know, you can't do this, but you can do that. Why is that? You know? I just had to drop out. I dropped out.
Yeah.
I couldn't face getting on the bus. Couldn't face being in the classroom. I literally started to feel like the walls were closing in on me, you know?
Was it that you were, it was putting you on a life path you didn't want? Was it your body kind of, I asked that only because the same thing kind of happened to me. I was going to be a lawyer and I went like, I applied, I sent the stuff and then I had a panic attack and I listened to my body. And I was like, okay, this is not what you want. Just for the first time, I think in my life, I listened to my body.
Yeah, I think when stuff like that happens to you, you really need to start listening to your body, because your body keeps a score. Your body's, your body's, isn't it? It's telling you,
yeah,
that this isn't good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a long time ago. I've not talked about this for a long time, actually, or thought about it so much. And it's easy now to sort of, I mean, it was pretty serious, I think, actually, and I think, I managed to, I think the thing is, what I did have going for me was this burning creative desire, or this desire to be creative in this whatever capacity, and it was music. Because before I left school, I did think I was going to go to the art school. I wanted to go to art school, and I had a bit of a anxiety wobble in my last year at school, and then realised, I don't think I can do that. And music was there kind of in the background waiting to save the day without sounding too naff.
No. Did all that stuff settle once you started really writing songs and performing?
Yeah, it got better. I mean, I had a lot of anxiety still in my 20s and my 30s, but not to that extent of panic attacks. And, I maybe had my last panic attack. It was on a tour, in a US tour. It was in Kansas, I think. And one in New York City as well, probably around about 2005. Was the last time I had an actual, panic attack, physical panic attack, full on. And I think my anxiety's been a lot better in the past, 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, what stopped that? Was it just something in your life? Did you start therapy? Did you get on Lexapro?
I didn't take medication, actually. I did start therapy, but probably not for that particularly. Sometimes I guess when you go to therapy, you go because you go for probably a specific reason. I started going when Carrie died, actually. And then you realise that you're actually there for lots of reasons.
Uh-huh.
And the anxiety is a thing we still talk about today, because my anxiety is mild now. Very mild, but it's there. Mm-hmm. It's not ever probably going to go away, but it's manageable and I can manage it. And the fact I'm sitting here talking to you about it speaks volumes, because back in the day it was a thing that I felt very ashamed of. I didn't understand it. I didn't want people to know that I didn't feel good, or that I felt scared, or that I felt anxious. And I realised that actually the best favour you can do yourself is just telling people and saying, I feel like this right now. I feel a little bit uneasy. And when you just address it, it helps it to settle and,
Yeah.
to manage it.
Which came first, if this is even answerable? You being able to be more vulnerable in your life, or you being able to be more vulnerable in your lyrics, in your creative life? Wait, did one flow into the other, or did you just start to do both at the same time?
Hard to say, but possibly maybe it was something that happened at the same time. I mean, I think, I certainly remember a period where back in the day when I first started, I was just like trying to write songs. I'd just get a bit of an idea. I think, well, let's write a song about Lee and Nancy, and you just write it. And then when you start getting into writing songs from deep within yourself, I think by the time I really started doing that, I kind of had confidence in myself that I didn't, sort of monitor myself too much, or, tell myself that I shouldn't write about this or that because it'll be too exposing or whatever. I just kind of suited myself, and I think that's got easier as I've gotten older.
You weren't scared to... I asked that because...
I was probably scared.
But you overcame it.
Yeah, there's fear
I was
there.
terrified to be vulnerable in lyrics.
I think it's probably important that you are a bit scared. Actually, I think it's important that you do sort of sit there, you know, wondering if you should write that down or talk about that. For me, anyway, because it means it's about something. It's meaningful. It's real. You know, I think it's. I mean, I'm not saying you should sort of expose and like just spill your guts, but sometimes I have literally spilt my guts on the page. I've done it. I don't regret it. I think it's important to do it because it's helped me.
But what gave you, you know, was it something outside of yourself, or was it just you know, a breakthrough within you, you know, that gave you the ability to do that?
I think probably partly just me dealing with my own troubles or my own thoughts and needing a way to, you know, pre-therapy, if you like, but needing a way to work through things. I would find that if I would write a song about something, it would just like sort of dissipate it and make me feel lighter. Just like a way of kind of self-therapy, you know, cathartic. I mean, lots of people say it's cathartic, don't they, to write, to get the songs out. You feel like a sort of cleansing, and I do literally feel like that. When I've written the songs that need to be written, there's a sort of feeling, oh, right, okay, I've got rid of that now. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think that's very fascinating. I was going to say interesting again, and I'm like, let's come up with a synonym. Fascinating is that, especially like in the 90s, you know, there was a large swath of like very obscure lyric writing. Like a lot of bands were doing that, and I don't know how cathartic that is, because I've done that. And now that I'm on the other side of being able to express myself and be vulnerable, I'm writing things that are a lot more revealing. Okay. And that,
more personal.
And that is cathartic. And it's just
definitely,
you know, I'm not articulating myself very well because I'm just trying to put it together for the first time here talking to you. But, you know, there are certain musicians like you where I did gravitate towards you because you could express what I wasn't able to express at a certain time.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I think when you see that or you get that from somebody, it gives you the courage to think to yourself, well, it's not so bad to do that. You know, nobody's going to die. It'll be all right. You know, because it's exposing and you do feel vulnerable. I do remember that feeling, and I'm not saying I never feel it. I do feel it sometimes because it is when you go and write a song or you're going to let somebody hear a song that you've written, I still feel that. You'll still feel it. There's that vulnerability. Oh, have I said too much? You know, is it too much for this person to hear this song? Or was it just enough for me? Did I need to write that? And I would always say, I've needed to write it. From a selfish point of view or from a personal point of view, I've had to write it. It's made me feel better. It's cleansed something. It's got something out of my system. And it makes me feel confident, actually. And it feeds that thing in me that needs to feel like I'm being confident or that I'm being brave.
Thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome.
This was really a delight, and I'm
thanks.
Really glad that we could talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks for making it that hour go by very quickly, and I'll go and get him off his Xbox now.
And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye. Oh 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 bye. 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 Beginnings.